Welcome to Museum Archipelago. I'm Ian Elsner. Museum Archipelago is your audio guide through the landscape of museums. Each episode is never longer than 15 minutes, so let's get started.
I'm Marieke Van Dam. I am the person behind Joyful Museums. I'm also the executive director of the Cambridge Historical Society here in beautiful Cambridge, Massachusetts. I'm a board member for NEMA, the New England Museum Association, and I'm the co-host of Museum People podcast.
Marieke refers to individuals connected with the museum field, including museum workers, as museum people. In 2016, together with other noted museum bloggers, Marieke tried to find out the reasons museum workers leave the field. Last month, they published a summary of their findings.
I used to work for the Park Service. That was my first museum job in Alaska. And I was working on a project, and I had some other people come in for the project, and I just got to know other museum people, which I had never known before. I hadn't been in the field very long, and I was just like, I turned to someone, and I was just like, museum people are kind of weird. And he was like, no, yeah, it's true. I was like, okay. And at that moment, I should have really internalized that more, put that question out there, because maybe it's not that museum people are weird. It's just that working in museums can be very hard. And I noticed that as I kept going. I moved out to Boston. I got my museum studies degree here at the Harvard program. I started working in small museums, volunteering at places, and I just, over time, was just struck by going into work every day and working at an institution with objects that I loved, history that I loved, some really amazing people, but also daily faced with, we don't have enough resources, I'm never going to get paid enough to really justify my lifestyle and the degree that I paid for, and all of this. And I never saw that getting better as my dentist told me to stop grinding my teeth, as I saw friends just bowing out, like I can't do this anymore, as I would, cry in meetings. And I think that over time, I just sort of started to look at this and thought, this is stupid. This is something we should all be talking about. I formally put all this together in my own mind around 2014 with a project called Joyful Museums, where I really just said, like, guys, I think this is a problem. And I kind of threw that out there into the museum community. And I was hoping that people were going to say, like, no, it's just you, like, get a grip. That didn't happen. I did a survey myself, and the answers I got were just truly heartbreaking. Like there was a lot of illegal stuff happening. And, I've worked at small places, and you don't have HR, and you have people who are not trained to be HR, and yet there they are. And just like bully, all the bad stuff that you can imagine. So I had a conversation. So I was doing that since 2014 and sort of spreading the word around that. And then at AAM in 2016, some colleagues and I really got together, Claudia, Sarah, Dawn, and I, and just really were like, this is a problem.
One of the most common responses from your survey, which was, why do you leave, had to do with money. And I mean, you know this better than I do, but it perpetuates other types of inequality, because if you can't pay people very much, then you only get people for whom money isn't an object, and that is an incredibly nasty feature of all of this.
It's just this huge conundrum. It's just like it's continuing to swirl around itself and make itself worse. Like money is at the root of it. And I don't want to say museums are unique, because all nonprofits suffer from this too. But that's what nonprofits are like. It's like something about this country, which is crazy, which we won't go into, but it says, like, there's this rule that if you want to make the world a better place, you join a nonprofit. But when you join a nonprofit, you're not allowed to make an honest living. And you're supposed to just do it for the love of it. Mm-hmm. And how do we fix it? And we're probably more susceptible to discrimination on other levels. Like you need a master's degree to get a development assistant job.
Right.
And that's just crazy, especially around here. People ask me, how did you get in the museum field? It's so competitive. I started in Alaska. They hired me just because I was around. And not everyone has that luxury to go to Alaska to start a job. I was lucky because I was in AmeriCorps Vista, and I got paid, a stipend, and that's how I ended up in Alaska. But a lot of people can't do that. Right. So anyway, sorry, yes. Anyway, all that to say, I agree.
No, but this is exactly the problem, and it's not going to be fixed. It's not going to be fixed in 10 years. And so for the people who care about this kind of thing, it's going to be the rest of the life, basically, is going to be focused on this fundamental thing. And surely part of doing this survey and putting it out there like you have has been because you want to have this conversation. Has it felt like the response has been adequate?
I think it was really nice to have it out there, get people talking about it, because a lot of people stepped up and said, yes, this is an issue. Because I think that, previously when I did my research, it was about, I was basically coming from the premise of we're all kind of miserable in our jobs. And that's a hard thing for people to come out and agree with, because no one wants to be on record as saying, yeah, no, our jobs are crappy and I get bullied, because there are repercussions. So I think that the way we phrased this as leaving the field is like a result of everyone's, group angst. I think it was safer because that shows employers, if you don't treat your workers better, they're going to leave, and that costs you money. Right. I wish more organizations were mindful of that. So many organizations I know, museums are like, well, that's just how it is. And we're going to pay them poorly, work them to death. They're going to go somewhere else. But, at least we got those couple years out of them.
And there's someone else already right behind them.
Absolutely.
Yeah, who's overqualified.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I just hired for my archivist here, part-time archivist, 2 days a week. And I got 50 responses.
That's amazing.
It's crazy. We're flooded. I mean, that's a whole other issue why people are unhappy. But yes, pay, number one.
Can you review from memory a couple of the other things that you found, the other issues that people brought up as to why they may have left?
Why they leave.
And again, I think that's super interesting to know that framing was deliberate to kind of move around the why are you unhappy?
Yeah. I think it's because it's something we've all thought about. I've seen so many of my people that I admire worked in museums, and now they go as consultants because they just can't work in that environment, and also they can control so much more that. So other reasons people left, work-life balance is an issue. There's this always constant refrain of do more with less. We went through that in 2008, 2009, 2010, right, when the recession hit. Those were low times, I think, for a lot of people, because people got laid off or jobs didn't happen, and it was constantly just do more. It's interesting to note about when people leave the field. A lot of people who leave are emerging professionals, like within the first 10 years. And so that's fascinating. So I'd love to have some conversations with those people just to hear their thoughts, because I'm a Gen X. That's another side group that I have, Gen X Museums group. It was just really, really fun.
All of these are great topics.
Yeah, I know. It's just really fun stuff. There's a lot to talk about. So that's interesting to me, because I think that perhaps there's some like student loan stuff there that's happening, and also cost of living changes between different generations. So I wonder if those young people are just like, I'm out. I can't afford it. I don't know. That's all speculation. For Gen Xers, when they leave the field, a lot of the responses were like maternity issues. So that's something I face, right? I lead an organization of 2 full-time staff. We don't qualify for anything. So I constantly try to tell people, and people have told me, like, if you leave, it's okay. You can always come back. Mm-hmm. And I think that's something important to remember. And I also, people who have left the field, they still stay involved because they volunteer. And sometimes, quite honestly, it takes someone from the outside to really make change in an organization, because you could be the smartest person and people think you're wonderful until the day they hire you, and then they stop listening to you. I'm not saying this from personal experience. I'm just saying that's why consultants are so paid so well. And people very often don't trust people that have been working in an organization for years. That's why we don't do enough talking to the front of house staff, people who see visitors day in and day out, tour guides. We never seem to ask them for their opinions. It's insane. And there's just like this back of house, front of house, like frontline staff, senior staff divide that I've heard so much about and that I've witnessed. It's room for improvement. What's different about this leaving the field stuff is the responses that people have given about thoughts or next steps are often institution-based. AAM should make accreditation changes, blah, 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 which I agree that those should be examined. However, I think my approach has always been the power of the people. And the only way you're going to see change is if you make it. And if you're unhappy, you have to deal with changing your environment. You can't wait for other people to change it. Mm-hmm. So people don't want to feel powerless. That's the worst. That's why I encourage people who are just having bad days to, go look at other jobs, because you're going to feel better. And then you might actually think, well, actually, I got a pretty good thing going on here, so maybe I'll stay. But it's always having an understanding that you are in control.
This has been Museum Archipelago. We hope you enjoyed your visit. For more information or to submit feedback, go to museumarchipelago.com or museum_go on Twitter. Next time, bring a friend.